So good afternoon, everybody. We're at the panel here today, and the theme of the panel is 80 million millennials can't be wrong. Why get started with organic crops? My name is Bryce Irlbeck. I work with AgriSecure on the organic crop consulting side of helping farmers transition through to organic crops. See, we have 80 million millennials that purchase organic food. We see that growing at a 10% rate each year. And we see this growth, and we wonder why aren't more farmers transitioning to this organic production when we have $10+ corn and profitable margins on that side. And conventional seems very tough to make a margin. So the theme today is why aren't more people transitioning, and how do we get that started? How do we get started into organic crops? And I got a group of farmers up here from all across the Midwest. We'll start over here with Chris Clockingay out of Central Illinois. And I'll let him introduce a little bit about his farm.
My name is Chris Clockingay. Our farm in Emden, Illinois, which is about halfway between Peoria and Springfield, we have 1,500 acres, farm about 1,500 acres, with half of it being organic, primarily corn, soybeans, wheat, and rye.
So one question, Chris, is can you tell everybody why you got started in organic, or what was the reasoning behind it?
I made a decision to come back to the farm in 2015. At the time, my wife and I were living in Denmark, and I knew that I wanted to come back to the farm, but I called up one of my friends and said, I don't see how I can make any money coming home and farming, so I don't know that I want to take over my family's farm. And he said, well, you should try organic. And so that year I transitioned to 160 acres, and every year since, for the most part, I've been transitioning land. So it was an economic choice that allows me and my family an opportunity to have a lifestyle on a farm and raise our family there. Like I grew up.
Thank you. Next, we got Aaron Zimmerman from North Central Nebraska, so I'll let him tell a little bit about his operation.
Yeah, hi. So we farm, we're about 2,500 acres in the Norfolk area in the northeast corner. We're almost 100% irrigated. We farm very sandy, marginal soils. I'm transitioning, as of this year, we'll have about 2/3 of it ready to go in organics coming out of alfalfa, and then by 2021 we'll be full on organic.
Perfect. And why did you decide to get into organic?
Well, for me, it was just, we see it all the time. We're always improving yields, getting more and more efficient, but there's always just this glass ceiling of profitability that you could just never overcome. At best, you're looking at slim margins, but how many years of that slim margin did it take to offset that one bad year you had 3 years ago? And so I just, this is a rigged system. I'm just not going to play it anymore. We're going to play in a specialized market. And it doesn't seem as specialized anymore because it's getting pretty mainstream, in my opinion.
Thank you. Next, we got Curtis Aday from New Mexico, so I'll let him tell a little bit about his operation.
Yeah, we grow about 2,500 acres between me, my father-in-law, and brother-in-law, and mostly corn. I just went through 3 years of transition and had my first organic corn crop this fall.
And for you, what was your reason getting into organic? What was that final decision-making factor?
Well, my background is not farming at all. I graduated college with an engineering degree and went to work in the petroleum industry in Colorado and kind of got tired of the volatility, wanted something I could do a little more controlling. And my father-in-law approached me and had a business plan, and we went straight into transitional acres, and I haven't looked back.
Thank you. And last, we got Eric Thalken from South Central Nebraska.
Yeah.
So, Eric, can you tell us a little bit about your operation?
Sure. We are 2,000 acres. This is the first year that we are 100% organic. Corn, soybeans, custom cattle grazing, yellow peas. Those are the big crops.
And you started transitioning a little bit before all these guys. What was the reason behind that?
Yeah, this is year number 5 since we started. For me personally, I just enjoyed the management challenge of organic. I'm operations manager. I'm not owner of the farm, so I was hired to transition this farm. I always enjoyed the management much more than conventional management. It's really difficult. It's 2 times more difficult, maybe 3 times more difficult. And the money, you get paid for that management. So that's the reason why I did it. The reason they did it is because for a lot of the reasons you guys spoke on is margins aren't there, didn't see a bright future for their farm.
Thank you. Appreciate all of the background. And so we'll jump into a few more of the in-depth questions, and I'll ask a few of you on here to answer each one. Aaron, we'll start with you. I know you're just getting through transition, getting into your first organic year in 2020. What was the biggest fear when you started in 2019 on transition? Just thinking back there.
Probably the biggest fear was just something that I couldn't control, which I guess coming from traditional agriculture, you're surrounded by things you can't control, whether it's mainly economics that are just, I mean, we're in a global situation that we can't do anything about. But I was worried about, am I just jumping out of one saturated market to get into another? Because if I'm thinking this is a good idea, surely everybody else is, right?
Right.
But after doing it, it's work. I mean, it's the management thing. But we're not afraid of work. We're farmers. We can do it. So that was probably my biggest thing there.
And what were the steps that made you comfortable? I mean, was it any support or any seeing somebody else do it or visiting other farms or?
Yeah, absolutely. Plug for you guys, I guess. AgriSecure was a great, shoulder to bounce things off of. And after, the more you get into it, you realize a lot of these fears you had are just, they're not founded. I mean, this industry is growing so stinking fast. I mean, we got a long ways to go before we overproduce this market. Long ways.
Well, long ways. And it takes a top-notch manager like you talked about. And not everybody's willing to do that. And
Right.
We'll talk a little bit later, all the pitfalls that you can run into that you just have to manage through, I'm guessing, that we talked about earlier on the stages. So it's a lot to take in and a lot to get through, but it's possible.
There's a lot of guys out there that still want that easy button, and they just never will adapt. But that's their deal.
So, Chris, you're 3 or 4 right now.
I started in 2015, so.
Going on year 5 in
Yeah.
2020.
Correct.
So what was your biggest fears when you started to transition to organic?
The first year that I started, I didn't know anything. I just knew that I wanted to do this. And so I stepped out and did everything on my own. My biggest fear was, am I doing something wrong? Is by using this, or what products can I use? What's the toolbox available to me to be able to do things? And I did it on my own for 1 year, and then was able to get in touch with AgriSecure. And so working with them and having a network has just brought a lot of peace of mind to me, because obviously farming is in the operations side is challenging enough. And so to be able to have a little bit of a stable structure there, if I have a question, can I use this product or that product, or what's the regulations for this? It's nice to have a group that's available to be able to work with.
Thank you. We'll move over to Eric here.
Sure.
Eric, what got you over transitioning? And I know you have a lot more history on organic. You've been in it for 10 plus years now, understanding it. So you want to even go back further than these guys did.
Sure. Repeat the question for me.
Yeah, so when you think about transitioning and you came back to a 3,000 acre farm,
Yep.
what was that final deciding factor that said, yes, we're going to do it?
Oh, geez. The first year I was there, we had 1/4 of alfalfa that we could farm organic immediately. We decided to also transition or try transitional on 1/4, on a different quarter, and that was I think it was the 3rd best as far as yield and profitability on the farm that year, and that was just a non-GMO premium. And so the owners of the farm said, just transition the whole thing, which was scary. It was scary.
So Curtis, coming over to you, you have a different perspective. You weren't farming before this. You left a job and decided to transition the whole farm organic. I mean, what was that deciding factor?
Well, a lot of advice from my father-in-law. He's been farming in that area for 30 years, and the water situation in our area keeps declining. So we wanted to figure out a way to make a similar amount of money, basically as conventional farming all acres, but only farm half. So it worked well with the rotation. We basically farmed 500 of our acres organically versus the previous operator ran 1,000. And that's the only way you can farm organically, to have rotations work for pest and weed control. So, and I guess being a millennial, my wife sees everything in the store, and it seems like the big push is for supposedly, a better living through organics, and everybody wants health, which is, I think, becoming the most valuable thing that we have. So here I am.
So I think the overarching comments here are, number one, that the economics are one of the main reasons that they did it for different reasons, bringing family back to the farm, a new challenge, making farming work in New Mexico where you have less water, bringing a farm management into
Absolutely.
organic. So economics is the main driver. A question that I just want to drive into. Once you got into it, is there other things that have driven you to be successful at? Is it the challenges? You feel good about it? The things like that and I'll start with you, Chris. Is there anything other than the economics that you found rewarding and enjoying about doing it?
I guess just being able to work. I'm of the similar thought as what Aaron is. Once I plant a crop, I'm there to work it. So it is a challenge, and so you just go ahead and enjoy being out there, cultivating and other things. So it's keeping an eye on your crops. Yeah.
And I'll help out because I work with most of you guys. Is when I see it, it's the light comes on. It's the challenge. It's the thinking. It's not I plant corn, I spray corn, I harvest corn, I hope I make a little profit in there. It's the thought process. It's the staying up late at night researching on Google how to do something. That I see the change in everybody that does organic. That they're rejuvenated in ag again. So
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, when you pull off a good crop after all that hard work, it's the best feeling. Best feeling as a farmer. It's tremendously hard. Maybe you don't think so with your no-till, but
No.
for me with tillage and cultivating, it's very hard. When you knock out 200 plus corn, it is awesome.
Yeah.
I also just enjoy trying new things. This year I tried to interplant some soybeans into some wheat that was this tall, and then roller crimping rye and planting into that. I mean, I'm doing things that the first year that I roller crimped rye, it was like it wasn't a parking lot on the road, but every car that drove by stopped and wanted to know what was going on out there. So.
And Aaron, so besides economics, I mean, what's a thing that you found that you enjoyed or is rewarding on the whole?
I guess I like not handling all the chemicals. Because we used to custom spray 10,000 acres to try to, subsidize a farm that was barely getting by, And, you see all those shuttles of chemicals rolling through the shop, and, it's a lot for one guy to get exposed to. And so I like not having to deal with that anymore.
Thank you. Curtis, besides working with the father-in-law, what's the best part of it?
I think it was my father-in-law's kind of sick idea that I need to become a farmer. I got to start from ground zero. So we got to go back 30 years and farm and learn about cultivators and constant tractor work and not going to the lake every summer and
Wait, what?
and just working all the time.
No boating.
So
No more boating, dude.
Aaron, do you still have your boat?
Uh-huh.
Do you use it?
It isn't
use it?
appreciating as much
Yeah,
these
yeah.
days.
No.
Eric, how about you? Besides economics, what's something that drives you on this?
Like I said, just to put together the biology, to find the right cover crop, the right tillage implement, it's always moving. You always have to be thinking. There's a management concern, almost on a daily basis during the growing season, and it's that challenge, while not comfortable at the time, is really satisfying over time, I suppose. The economics for me were probably less important. I just enjoyed that part of it.
Perfect.
Yeah, man.
Well, it's things you can manage. It's things that you can have control of.
Yeah.
As opposed to,
Unless it rains all the time, then you're in big trouble.
well, yeah.
I definitely love to see, everything we do, we run 15 passes to get corn done. Just how much each of the things you did contributes to the final harvest day. It's amazing.
It seems, I mean, from my perspective as a farmer too, it seems the little things make a difference. And they'll show up later in the year. Conventional farming, the little things do help, but it's not as big. It can be a difference between 150 and 200 bushel of corn. So doing all the little things right seems to be.
Absolutely. Like how many times are you willing to get out of the tractor and adjust the cultivator?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you're looking back there, there's a problem. Are you going to get out again?
I don't
Are you
wanna
gonna
get out,
Are you going to
but
get
yeah,
out
I better.
time 34?
It takes discipline.
Yeah, it does. It does.
So I think the big question in the room, and one that we get a lot as well, is how do you manage weeds? What's this? How to be successful managing weeds? And I don't think anybody has the exact answer. There's probably would have an island by now, but
Yeah.
I'll start with you.
For me, been doing it about 10 years now, and it's always been a biological thing. So for me, it always starts with, at least for corn and soybeans, it always starts with cover and selecting that cover to both, to cover a couple bases. For corn, it's going to be nitrogen and weed control. For beans, it's going to be actually pulling nitrogen out of the soil environment, and that's good weed control as well. So, hold on, what was the question again? Sorry.
So the question is.
Weeds.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
How do you manage weeds?
Starts with the cover crop, tillage implement. We went to high-speed disc, horse joker, limpkin, Reuben, which actually lift instead of press like a conventional disc might. For me, if I could get one excellent hoe pass, I get one excellent close cultivation or run Buffalo 6300s and one monster hill pass, that'll usually take care of it 80% of the time. This year we got one pass on everything, and that was a close cultivation. It wasn't pretty, but yeah, those are my main tools: are biology, an awesome hoe pass, tillage implements, cultivator, Buffalo 6300 cultivator, and multiples of those.
So Chris has a little bit different philosophy through his farm. Chris, in managing weeds, what different tactics do you use?
On soybeans, I'm putting out seeding 3 bushels of rye in the winter, in the fall, and then that grows, and I'm then rolling that down and planting. That's my pass, and I had transition acres this year, a few 250 acres of beans where I ran that over, and I only planted. I didn't go back in the field again, and I had some, aside from where the creek came out, I had water hemp down there, but my fields were relatively clean, so that was good. Just on the corn pass, if I'm doing corn, then I have a flamer.
Row crop flamer?
Yes, a row crop flamer. So what I'm doing is, once we hit about V3, then taking a flame with LP and pointing that to the row as you drive about 4 miles an hour through the field, and then coming back the next day and cultivating that. And that flame pass will really get out, that takes care of all my broadleaves. It doesn't get the grass, so I'm dependent upon my cultivation to get the grass.
Thank you. So Aaron, the question's a little bit different for you because you're in transition, and
Right.
one thing you did was alfalfa. And so one of the questions I had is not weed control and alfalfa, but what's your thoughts about alfalfa and the transition, weed control, and your feeling now about going into organic in 2020?
Well, as much fun as alfalfa is when you have the wettest weather pattern in history, I mean, it was the better way to transition. Because I'm transitioning with row crops as well. But it's just a really good way to clean up a field and get it conditioned, ready to go for that first year of organic. And as far as down the road, you'll have to ask me in 5-10 years what a good program is.
Yep. So one of the things we recommend is a lot of people try to transition through row crops, corn and soybeans, because they know how to raise that and they're comfortable with it. And we started talking to Aaron, the one thing we said, the amount of acres that he's looking at doing, alfalfa is just going to leave him better in 3 years. And it wasn't easy, obviously, as he said,
No.
You got a good opportunity to do really good corn next year.
Yep, and I think there'll always be alfalfa rotating around because we'll just, whether it's, weeds get out of control and they need a reset, oh well, you can sell some organic alfalfa.
Mm-hmm. So Curtis down in New Mexico, when I went and visited him the first time, You showed me one of the fields, and they had pigweed that looked like trees. They were taking it was along the outside of the field, so they're taking care of it. But he's got a whole different beast down there with weeds, and
Yeah.
they seem to grow a lot faster.
Yep, and those are like the last, I don't know, 0.001%. Because when you start, it's a full-on blanket of pigweed. It's unbelievable. And especially because my farm's a lot different. Well, you were talking about the alfalfa. We went straight from conventional corn and transitioned straight and went corn after corn after corn. And man, the weed pressure just kept getting worse and worse. And so one of our biggest controls was a deep breaker. So we'll break it twice during the winter while it's negative or below 20 degrees. And it is amazing how much that eliminates Johnson grass and pigweed. I mean, we'll plow insides and outsides of circles. We run on pivots. And between the inside and the outside where the deep breaker ran, I mean, it's just beautiful ground. And then the whole inside is just a blanket of pigweed. And yeah, it was very challenging. And then I also had some issues where we did a wheat and a hairy vetch mix for some nitrogen inputs. And we had to plow the wheat vetch mix 5 times with a high-speed disc. And then the whole top of the ground, after I got my corn planted, the whole top of the ground is covered in all that straw. So that is very challenging to cultivate through. You almost can't do it. So then I had the flame weeder, which was great, but what happens whenever you flame a mat of wheat straw on the top?
Do you have a video of that?
I do somewhere, yes. The whole people were driving by me, and the whole field is like partially on fire for the last 50 feet after I passed.
Did you get a burn permit?
No,
Yeah.
I called and told the fire department.
Don't come.
Hey, yeah, I know it looks like there's a fire over here, but I'm just cultivating. It's organic.
So as you can tell from up here and just alone in Nebraska, everybody has weed control. None of us know the exact way of how to make it work 100% of the time. Mother Nature decides that, and there's a bunch of different ways to do it. We've all had our challenges, and it's not perfect, but the fact is you keep working through it, you find different ways to do it, you find different methods, different tools, the biology side, different rotations.
It can be very, very good, though.
Mm-hmm.
It can be very, very good.
Yep. So, moving on to the next question we have for everybody is, given the low commodity prices and the tight margins, when you started out and you built the budgets and you sit down and you go to the banker and you say, hey, Mr. Banker, I'm going to lose money for the next 2 years. And that third year, I'm going to make it. How did you feel about that? How did you go about that? How did you internalize it and think about it that we can get through this and at the end is the pot of gold, per se? So start with you, Aaron.
You know, bankers are pretty easy to work with as long as you got working capital, right? I mean, as years go on, we have negative margins that eventually gets depleted, and they're going to want you to come up with a plan. Like either you need to sell something or figure out another way to improve your situation, right? And so you can either keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting things to improve, or you can, I mean, our banker's been fantastic. I mean, once they saw what it meant, I mean, yeah, we're gonna lose money, but you know, honestly, things didn't look good anyways, so might as well. Just go for it. Now we're at the end of that tunnel, and here's the light, so hopefully we can capitalize on it. And away we go.
Thank you. And so, Eric, when you did it all in one shot as well, right?
All in one shot. The farmer's probably in a different situation. They had just sold a large hogs genetic company. There was other technology sales. They were part of some technology company. So there was cash available. So that's how we transitioned. Not that we didn't burn some equity. We definitely did. Yeah.
But the light at the end of the tunnel when you made it, it was worth it.
Oh yeah. Yep, no doubt about it.
So Chris, you're doing it over a longer period.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've just kind of stepped up my operation from 160, 130. I skipped a year, then I went 400, and this year I'm at 120. So I'm moving through the process, but I can tell you that, and the reason why I feel like I can do after I've got so now I've got about 300 acres certified organic, and I'm getting a nice check for the crop that's produced. And so I feel like because I've done that, that's allowing me to be able to continue to move through these next 520 acres that'll come up. And then all the ground that I've transitioned is all family-owned ground. So my next step would be seeking out my landlords and seeing if they wanted to do that. But until I feel like I get a better feel for it and get more comfortable, then I'm okay where I am.
Perfect. And Curtis,
The bank.
the bank. So in the 3-year process, I mean, looking at it, was it 3 years ago now?
Mm-hmm.
And putting the budgets together, they aren't pretty the first 2 years. What drove that final decision and being able to do that, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, if it wasn't for Billy's history in the area, I don't know if I would have been able to get a loan, but we did. And, we're pretty fortunate to be in such a livestock feed demand area. So we just sold our transitional ground just sold as conventional silage and corn silage, and it worked pretty well. So we didn't make any money, but we basically broke even and, started out into organic with 0 instead of negative. I mean,
Yep,
that's
definitely.
not bad to ask for.
Did you get any pushback for weeds in the silage? I've heard some pushback of guys that wanted to sell silage.
No, not too bad.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good.
So we'll move on here to the next question, and Eric, we'll ask you this one. In the next 5 to 10 years, what role is organics going to play in your operation? And not just right now, but do you see expanding? Where's that?
Yeah, I think when you start to build up that cash reserve, then you do have opportunities to expand. And I mean, most farmers here think of themselves as expanding in some way. It might be more intense or more acres or something like that. So in 5 to 10 years, yeah, absolutely. I'd like to figure out a way where the weed control becomes less, and I think you're onto it with no-till, where you can scale maybe without being so intensive on labor and equipment and stuff like that. No-till, I'm very high on here.
So expanding and figuring out how to scale it with less labor and less intensive tillage.
Yeah, the big thing this year, and I got kind of disappointed with organic this year because I have always thought of myself as like a very, or at least a higher level manager when it comes to erosion, taking care, like I really do care about the tenets of organic. This year, and probably you experienced this as well, but we had like a perfect storm of frozen ground, feet of snow and torrential rainfall on top of it in Nebraska, and I watched land leave the farm, and it was just, it was killer, and so I was like, organic. You cover, there was a lot of other factors involved. Cover crop got in late, so there wasn't much growing there. It ended up failing, so there was really no ground cover.
Yeah, and that's one thing. It's the tillage is one thing aspect that I think all of us up here would like to reduce. It's something that's a necessary evil right now.
It's not fun.
It's
not fun.
That's everybody's trying different things in our group, and especially around the country, to try to reduce that. So, Aaron, I'll ask you, in the next 5 to 10 years, what role is organic going to play, and what is your plan with organic production and expansion and things like that?
Yeah, we're gonna be all in on organics. Right now, yes, we're just doing it the old-fashioned way with tillage, thinking, okay, let's get some cash built up, and then we can start experimenting with. Because I do think things like relay cropping and everything else are the wave of. We can, in fact, do a near no-till concept, but organic. I mean, that's the gold standard. I mean, how much better can you get for the environment
That's the
and
gold
the food
standard.
supply too?
Yeah.
So that's where we're pushing for. But for right now, we need to get some padding built up so we can afford to do those things.
Perfect. So, Curtis, you're in a little different area. What is your 5 to 10 year outlook? And I know you've been dabbling in cattle and looking at organic cattle too as well. So, you just give us a picture of what that would look like.
5-year plan is we're going to start doing a lot more alfalfa and try and reduce our weed issue, which I think will help tremendously with the pigweed and the grasses. And yeah, I mean, let me think about that again. So 5 years from now,
Yeah.
yeah, and then hopefully find more organic ground, really. We want to keep farming.
So expanding on more organic ground, and how about on the cattle side? Is that something that,
We haven't really seen a whole lot of good things for organic cattle yet, but we also haven't pried too hard at that one. We currently run conventional beef cattle, 500, grow them to 800 pounds over the winter and graze that on whatever ground that we have, and it works for wintertime, and we also get a harvest after they come off. So I don't know what to say about the organic cattle. I don't know much about it. I haven't heard any demand about it, so.
all right. No, I know being down there that you're running cattle and you're looking at organic dairy heifers and had done stuff with that. So looking at different channels to expand that aren't quite there yet, but something in the future.
I'd just like to comment, the nice thing about organics is you don't have to farm half the county to be profitable. You can maintain your base acres and make a really nice living. Just staying where you're at. Just do a really good job of what you got, and
No doubt about it.
yep.
Right? The more efficient I can get on my small acres and reduce my input costs as much as I can, it'd be a great living.
So Chris, how do you see your farm in 5 to 10 years? I know expansion is one thing that you're doing, but on a controlled basis.
Yeah, if there's so I had an instance where the rye that I rolled down, there was still, I was having ragweeds in it, and I just made a call after 4 days after it seeing rolled, and I actually planted the field, that I decided it wasn't good enough, and if I had let it go, that there would be weed pressure, significant weed pressure that I wouldn't be able to take care of. So I ripped the field up and I turned it into a regular clean tilled field as best as possible. But I had my father, who's 71, he rode the cultivator for many, many passes on that field. And my wife and I took a trip to Denmark for 2 weeks. And before I left, he said to me, I don't mind being your number one man, but you need to find somebody else to do this work. He said, I'm no longer interested to do that. And so for me, that was so fine, but trying to find somebody to work with me has been a little bit of a challenge, but I've got a gentleman who will work together with me. And so for me, it's about finding out what can the two of us do together to manage the whole thing. And if there are acres that come available, that would be great. But I want to do a good job with what I have first.
Perfect. And so with the time here, we'll do one quick question. Is if you had to give advice to a farmer that's struggling to make that decision to stay organic or stay conventional or go organic, what would that advice be? It can be anything from starting the transition to look at the future, anything like that. So I'll start with you, Chris.
The thing I like the least about farming is trying to market my crop, and having a price for your corn that's already set and a price for your beans that's set once you get to that organic stage allows me to focus my efforts on being the best farmer that I can, trying to produce as much as possible, and therefore being able to be the most profitable through that.
Perfect. And Aaron?
Really, what do you have to lose? I mean, in the current economics, what do you have to lose? I probably lost more often than I gained, hedging, trying to squeeze another 10, 20 cents out of a bushel of corn. And yeah, you're right, you don't gotta worry about that anymore because the price is very consistent. It doesn't fluctuate with the normal dynamic you see in traditional agriculture. So it's just nice to know that you can focus on growing a good crop and you know that you're gonna sell it for a good price. What more could you ask for?
Curtis?
I don't know what everybody's operation is like. You have to kind of dig into that, whatever works for you, but I know what works for us is having that pretty consistent $9 to $10 corn and having places we can deliver it to within an hour.
So I won't.
Is advice on transition?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
if you're thinking about taking that step into transition into organic, what would you tell that farmer?
Start slow.
So,
Start slow and find people that know what they're doing. That would be my biggest ones. Neighbors, usually there's someone around that you could talk to. Bryce, maybe. Bryce knows what he's doing.
no, perfect. So with that, we'll open it up to questions. If anybody has questions for anybody on the panel. I know, are we getting close to time, Steve? Any questions?
He's got a microphone.
Just one question. Stress, burnout, with all that amount of work, what is good support system for it? Where do you find good help, and how do you maintain it? Just basically a question to that is, how do you carry that workload when it's so high?
So I'll repeat that question
Yeah.
for you. So he asked, with the stress and the workload, how do you cope with it? What do you do? What are some things that you utilize to be able to get through that and manage the whole process? Is that correct?
Correct.
It's only 3 months. It's only 3 months.
Yeah.
That's what I say. I mean, is it hard? Yes. Are you dead tired? Absolutely. It's only 3 months, man.
I think
The intense part of the year doesn't last. In the end part of the year, you might do different things with cover crops or whatever, and that might be different than conventional. But at the end of the year, you're harvesting a crop, and it's not that much different.
So I'll ask you, Eric, just because
Sure.
talking to you on the phone, listening to you, I think one of the things you learned early on is to trust the people you work with, and,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
to train them and be able to rely on them is one of the biggest things I think change in organic, because you can't do it all yourself. So,
Yeah, there's people that do it different ways with less expensive labor. For us, we have very high quality adults that can take care of themselves and generally know how the farm works. And they both have a lot of freedom, but they also have a lot of responsibility, and that generally tends to be a good way to get people motivated. It's been pretty good.
I'm pretty fortunate. I've got a 13-year-old son who just loves sitting in a tractor. And with him comes buddies that love sitting in a tractor. So that helps, so that all those acres of cultivation, it's not such a huge monumental task anymore. You show them what to do, turn them loose, and you can go do something else and know that field's gonna get cultivated. Same thing, you find friends, buddies. My recommendation is find an insurance adjuster, because they don't work all that much. And they love playing in a tractor.
Absolutely.
Find guys like that.
So Chris, I know this has been a struggle for you to figure out how to manage that part of it, the workload, and how many employees to have and where do I find them. So I'll let you.
so. For me, starting small, then I plant with a 40-foot planter, and then I had 20-foot cultivators. Well, after you sit out there in a tractor at 5 or 6 mile an hour cultivating, you're getting 10 acres an hour, and you're thinking to yourself, is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to get out of here? So for me, starting small showed me that, okay, I can do it on a low budget with that equipment, but now that I'm expanding and getting bigger, then I'm trying to move towards 40-foot equipment that can match, and I can drive the same track and things like that. So being able to start small to know what equipment you need, and then being able to get that sized up and make that capital purchases, because that's been, something that I am a little bit surprised that it does take a little. If you didn't have a cultivator, then you need to make those investments.
So Curtis, how about you?
Well, the more acres you're going to grow, definitely the more staggered out we need to be on our plant dates for corn, because you're getting a bind where you got 2,000 acres that need the same implement that within 3 days. So, I mean, you just got to learn to delegate, schedule, and it'll all work.
Rotation's key. This last year, I planted winter wheat for the first time since we got rid of hogs in 2004, and then only put out 20 acres, but I put out 131. So that takes, when you look at, and this year I've got probably 300 acres of small grains that'll all get harvested in the summertime. So that really cuts back on my workload in the fall for harvest and those things. So the rotation allows your workload to be shifted throughout the year, which helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To recap this, Eric, from your standpoint, management, training, good people on the farm is
Good
one
people,
way
yeah.
to leave.
And to be honest, they get paid pretty darn well.
All right. And for Chris, it's having the right equipment size to match the acres and being able to know when to do that, when to increase and how to purchase that. And Aaron's just tapping the labor pool he doesn't have to pay.
Or it's cheap.
Yeah.
$10 an hour. You get a lot of kids at that price.
And Curtis is comes down to planning. You know, the plan that's executable, that's manageable. Is that correct, Curtis?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Absolutely.
Next question.
Well, first, we'd like to hire your kid. We can pay him a lot more than. So, approximate margins for you all, are you 20%, 25%? Are you 10% margins?
Oh, boy.
So,
10% of what?
yeah.
Just like a dollar value?
So
You br-
You're talking $7, $8, $10 corn, are you making 10% margin?
Well,
So are you asking for like production cost per bushel? Is that
Not production cost, but what your return is.
For the whole farm or like for an acre? Like an acre of corn will do, you know, you could get $600-700 net on an acre of corn. For soybeans, what's that?
What's your cost?
I would figure an acre of corn would be 1,000, 1,100,
Including right?
including rent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all together. You know, this year wasn't a great year, but on a good year, the previous year we did 201, a whole field average. So good yields are achievable. It goes down from there from corn, beans, peas.
Hi guys, thanks so much for your time. In our area, we don't have a market for organics. How can we reach out? What support do we have to possibly set that up?
Where are you from?
yeah.
Southeast corner of Colorado,
Sure you do.
Yeah, there's a lot of markets.
is there?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm West Texas Panhandle.
West
And-
Texas.
There's several dairies and commodities that they'll buy it.
So so what we would come up with would be just trucking. We'd just have to truck it down.
Truck
there.
or rail.
I sold last year's organic corn through Sunrise Foods for, what was it, $9 picked up. I think half of it went to Watts, Oklahoma, half of it went to some feed mill in Missouri.
They'll pick it up.
They
Yeah.
picked it
Just
up.
did that much?
I've corn
Yep.
going to Michigan from Nebraska.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
You definitely have a corn market.
the
Yeah.
normal logistics and the normal thinking of what conventional, because conventional is very efficient on that it doesn't hold true, and things happen like that right now because there's such a demand for it. So they're picking it up and trucking it across the country.
Okay. Thank you.
A nitrogen source for 200 bushel corn. I guess I'm curious, or I'm just curious about fertility in general to grow a 200 bushel corn crop.
Sure. Like I spoke about, if we can take off a crop of peas and get hairy vetch planted behind it, we've taken cuttings of hairy vetch where we have 190 units just in the top. So to that, I would add a ton of chicken litter, which is about 80 units. Most of that's organic form. It's one of the things with organic farming is, and the soil disturbance, sometimes you need soil disturbance to get the stew rolling, so to speak, there. To get that broken down, turn it to plant available form. Yeah, a good combination of cover and animal waste.
The other thing, it doesn't have to be organic manure.
Oh, no, it could be
There's a
conventional.
lot of people that think.
I
it
mean,
has to be
we
organic.
have hog slurry for, we could cover 500 acres, and the rest of it is a combination of covers and litter.
One more question. Yeah, and answer this, one more question.
All right. So Curtis, what do you use for nutrients?
Luckily, we have a chicken facility within 10, 15 miles. So we'll throw a 2-ton chicken, 6-ton compost, works out to about $200 an acre in fertility costs. And I made 233 bushel corn this year. So it's very, very well possible.
And Aaron? And what are you using or plan to use for fertility this
We're
year?
kind of just whatever it takes to get it done. We've got a local hog outfit, and so they'll run a hose over and get the acres that they can reach with hogs. We do a lot of raw chicken litter, and even some pelletized chicken litter too. Over the top, in season, right before the last pass of cultivation, we'll throw 1,000 pounds to a ton of that pelletized stuff out there. So you just kind of take and we've done some compost feedlot as well on some legume like alfalfa ground. That works really good on that, we've seen.
Yeah, the alfalfa in the rotation, that'll take you a long
Absolutely.
way. That'll take you a long way down
Yeah,
the road.
and just to be clear that, there needs to be a legume crop to give you some nitrogen credit, because there would just be a lot of nitrogen to haul in manure form.
Too much.
to grow a crop.
Almost environmental issue
Yeah, it would
at
be.
that point.
Yeah.
So Chris being in central Illinois, he's got a little bit more of a problem, not as many.
Yeah, so I'm in an area that's deficit for livestock operations. So what I'm doing is I found a hog operation that wants to get rid of their manure, so in the spring, they need a place to go with it. So I'm doing spring applied hog manure. I found a source for a composted chicken manure, which the nitrogen is in a more stable form, so it can last longer. I'm trying that on a large scale this year, and then just regular chicken manure from a layer facility.
So to recap that, you have to be pretty crafty to come up with manure sources of nitrogen. It's out there, you can find it. Chicken manure is movable. Give you an idea just to balance it out. Chicken manure at 2 to 5 tons, depending on the crop before it. Biology is very important in the whole system of getting that creating available nitrogen through peas or alfalfa or cover crops is a huge part of it. And to go into the overarching of, you can find about anything organic inputs that you can find in conventional besides liquid nitrogen or anhydrous. So
In some way.
in some way, some
way,
shape or form. What, any more questions?
One more.
You're talking 2 to 5 tons of raw.
Correct.
Yeah.
You were talking liquid also when you talk about 2 tons, you're talking about.
Talking about dried chicken poop.
So with that, with no more questions left, we'll finish it up and we can get back to the floor or to the next meeting. So appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
If you have any more questions, we have the AgriSecure booth downstairs. Happy to answer questions or go over things with you. So feel free to stop by.